Started. We are at 5:06, scheduled to start at 5 p.m. Again, I am so sorry. It took me a few minutes to get everything situated the way that I needed it, and I am new to the Facebook Live world, but in the future we will be right on time with 5 p.m. So thank you so much for those of you who are joining us live. Today we are going to be talking about why everyone needs a therapist. How everyone can benefit from therapy. You might be someone who's watching this who has been to therapy before. You may be someone who is brand new to therapy. You may be someone who is completely opposed to therapy. And all those things are okay because for so many different reasons, people have their visions of what therapy is and isn't, their thoughts about what therapy can and cannot help with, and the reasons why and why not people would go to therapy. But I can tell you that every single person can benefit from therapy. If we think about trauma, it's kind of a big word in the vernacular of the world today. Trauma, trauma, trauma. Everybody's talking about being trauma informed. Schools are talking about trauma. Churches are talking about trauma. Everywhere is talking about how to be more trauma informed, how to be aware that the people who come to you are coming to you with baggage. So trauma informed workplaces even, how everyone who you interact with has their own story and you don't know what that story is. So to just be informed and aware of the language that you're using. Well, in the therapeutic world, the word trauma has a fairly basic definition, and that definition is experiencing something that one was never made to experience. So in children, a lot of times when we think about trauma, we think about abuse of some sort, whether that be physical, verbal, sexual, or neglect of some kind, whether it be educational neglect or nutrition neglect or neglect of a kind and bonding relationship. There's all sorts of different ways that children can be traumatized. With adults, we think about childhood trauma and how that can carry over. But we also think about the different things that adults experience in their day-to-day lives, whether it be community violence, whether it be racism, whether it be something that they've witnessed that was something that was so out of the ordinary, so big, so extraordinary almost, that it was something that they were never made to experience. That's what trauma really is. Well, in our world today, everybody gets a pass. Because in our world today, for the past 3+ years, we have been dealing with a trauma. We've been dealing with a thing that we were never made to experience. We've been dealing with a virus called the COVID-19 virus. So children who were supposed to be going to school are not going to school because of the COVID-19 virus. Now, most of them are back in school now. But at the time, children experienced this school year that they were never made to experience. Teachers were having to teach in virtual environments. And that is a situation that they were not trained for, that they were not prepared for. It was something that they were never made to experience. Parents were having to quit jobs, find new jobs, ask for different hours, all sorts of things because their children are now at home and their children are expected to be online at certain times. And so these parents were having to support their child in their education, in their schooling in ways that they were not prepared for. And they were experiencing something that they were never made to experience. Children, as they went out, they were afraid that they would catch the virus and that virus could kill them. Children were told this, which was the truth. That's the science of it. But that is something that they were never made to experience. Adults were told that this virus is one that can kill you. And so they experienced this trauma, this thing that they were never made to experience. Then we go even further. Many children, many adults have lost someone that they've loved because of the COVID-19 virus. They've experienced something that they were never made to experience. They lost someone long before they had ever thought they would lose that person. They experienced something that they were never made to experience. So in the world of COVID, what I can say is whether it be because of your work, because of your school, because of relationships, because of just the environment, because of the way that you can or cannot leave the house, because of the places that you can and cannot go, because of vacations that had to be canceled, because of all sorts of plans that were completely upended. We have all been traumatized. And because we've all been traumatized, you now have a pass. You can say you are a traumatized individual. And no, that doesn't always mean that you were abused in some way, and it doesn't always mean that you were neglected. It doesn't always mean that you witnessed something horrific or violent. It just means that you experienced something that you were never made to experience. And because of that, we are all traumatized people. Now, I'd like to show you a little bit about what happens when trauma enters the brain. So I'm going to draw a picture here. Let me see. I've got my paper here. So I'm going to draw a picture of a brain. Now, my drawings are not perfect, but I've got my brain here. And I'm going to walk you through a couple of the basics about the brain. So if this is our brain, and let me hold up more paper so that it's less see-through here. If this is our brain, okay, and let's imagine that we're looking at it from this way. Yeah, so the brain is facing this way. This is a side view of the brain. The brain has three basic pieces, and if you've been watching MisterStuTV everywhere on social media for any period of time, then you know these pieces of the brain. Those pieces are brain stem, limbic system with the little amygdala, cortex, prefrontal cortex. That's the brain from bottom to top. This is a great moment for me to say, if you do not follow MisterStuTV everywhere on social media, please take some time as I'm finishing my brain drawing and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere so that you don't miss out on any of the mental health fun. So there's three main pieces of the brain. And then there's a couple of smaller ones. So here's our brain. I went back over it with Sharpie so that it shows up better. This piece down here, this is called the brain stem. That's the part that's responsible for keeping you alive. It's connected to the spine, and its main function is to keep you alive. It regulates things like breathing, heartbeat, digestion. All those things happen down in the brain stem. That's also the part of the brain that if you break your neck right here, that's why you can die from that, is because this brain stem actually keeps everything running. Now this middle piece right here, it's in the middle, kind of around in between your ears. This part is called the limbic system. This part is mainly responsible for emotions, so your emotional drive. It's also responsible for letting you know which emotion you're feeling, and it's responsible for helping you tell stories about that emotion. So I feel sad. Here's why I think I'm feeling sad. Then this part up here, this is called the cortex, and all the way up front, that's the prefrontal cortex, but we'll just talk about the cortex in general here. The cortex, that's the part that's responsible for active reasoning, for problem solving, for putting all the pieces together. When you are solving math problems, you're up here. When you are answering science questions, you're up here. When you are remembering the plot to a story, you are up here in the cortex. So that's the main pieces of the brain. And then there's this little piece right here, and it's the size of an almond. One of our producers on the MisterStuTV show says, don't let the almond drive you nuts, because this little, oh, there it is, this little almond right here, that piece is called the amygdala. The amygdala. And the amygdala is basically the brain's smoke detector. It goes off, it sends an alarm whenever it feels like something is dangerous. So we've got the brain stem that will keep you alive, the limbic system that helps you understand what you're feeling, and the cortex, which helps you make sense of it all. Then there's the amygdala, which says whether or not something is dangerous. Well, in traumatized brains, what happens is that the amygdala actually starts to fire off and tell you that things are dangerous even when they're not. All this information, the way that it works is your senses take in different information. It comes up through the brainstem and then it hits the amygdala. If the amygdala says it's safe, then guess what? It allows you to think about how you're feeling, what you're feeling, and then what to do about it. But let's imagine now that you are walking and there's a snake that slithers out in front of you. Well, most people are going to jump backwards and then realize that it's a snake that's in front of them. And that is because your amygdala sends you into fight flight mode, which is down in the brainstem, and it causes you to run away because it says, danger, danger, danger. We don't have time to think about how we feel. We don't have time to think about what to do. Just get out of here. That's what your amygdala is trying to signal. But what about this? What if you were in kind of a darker room and you saw a curled up rope? Now, some people would glance over and think that it's a snake. That's your amygdala, and it fires and says, jump back, fight or flight, jump back. And that is your amygdala saying that this is dangerous. But a few seconds later, after you realize that it was just a rope, you might start laughing at yourself and being like, oh my gosh, I thought that was a snake. And you didn't even know what you were jumping about. That is the amygdala in action. Well, in traumatized people, the thing that had them traumatized causes the amygdala to fire in some ways that can be harmful. For instance, if someone was in the military and they served in a war, their amygdala might fire during fireworks, telling them that it's dangerous even though it's not. Their amygdala might fire when they smell a certain smell because it reminds them of a time that was dangerous, even though it's not. Now, in the world of COVID, our amygdalas can tell us even that social situations in general are dangerous, even when they're not dangerous situations. Now, there are some social situations that we should not be in because we should, still be taking caution to protect ourselves, protect those that we come in contact with. But the amygdala can start to fire and say anything social is dangerous. And so it sends you into fight, flight, or freeze down in the brainstem. You don't have time to think about what you're feeling. You don't have time to think about what to do about it. A child in school will just try to run out of the classroom, or will have a tantrum, or will just completely shut down because their amygdala is telling them that something is dangerous even though it's not. In today's world, there are all sorts of ways that people try to avoid their trauma. I wrote some down. Social media, endless scrolling is a way of our brains trying to escape, trying to get away from this trauma. One of the main signs of PTSD is an avoidance of anything that might cause you to remember the trauma. So endless scrolling on social media is actually a symptom of trauma. Hiding behind screens. When we are just watching endless things on television, on YouTube, on TikTok. And I'm telling you, you should follow MisterStuTV on TikTok. I don't think that TikTok is terrible or anything like that. But if you are hiding behind your screen for hours and hours and hours, it's an avoidance of something else. Emotional dysregulation in children. This happens especially in the school environment, especially now, because again, these children have had their brains rewired, and that amygdala is telling them that social situations, anything around other people is dangerous, even though schools are going to unending lengths trying to protect their children. Emotional dysregulation, it's a fight or flight response. Fight response doesn't always mean fist fighting. It can be a tantrum. It can be an emotional outburst. There's also one that's called freeze. That can be a shutdown. That can be just a burst of tears. If you are seeing any of those things in children, it's typically a response to some type of trauma. Avoiding direct confrontation. That is something that is happening in our world everywhere. The passive-aggressive communication, or the communication that happens just on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, because people are afraid to confront one another, and not in a violent confrontation, but in a direct confrontation way, because they're afraid of how someone might respond. That is a response to trauma. A disproportionate response, or our cancel culture, because what we try to do is we try to say, you know what, anything that might have made a mistake at any point in their lives, let's just push them all out. And that is also a symptom of PTSD, is an out of proportion response to some type of stimulus, to some type of trigger. So we see something and then we say, canceled, 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 canceled. Now, I can say that not everyone should have a platform, but the way that our world has just said, like, all right, if you make a mistake, canceled, canceled, canceled. That is an out of proportion response a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times it's an out of proportion response to something that is a personal feeling that causes our amygdala to get so scared that it says, we don't have time to think about this. We don't have time to think about what to do. You know what? Just get them out. Just get them out. This makes me completely uncomfortable. Forget it. Just get them out. It's a response to trauma. Then the final one, it goes with social media. It goes with hiding behind screens. It goes with the cancel culture. It's this need for constant and often intense stimulus, whether it be drugs, alcohol, whether it be violent images on the screen, whether it be a 24-hour viewing of the news. All of these things are a trauma response. Because again, if your amygdala is cutting off contact and not allowing you to think about how you're feeling, not allowing you to think about what to feel, then it takes a big stimulus for you to have any kind of emotional response. Well, as people, we like emotions. So what will happen is after trauma, it takes a bigger stimulus for you to feel the same kind of thing. And all of us now have been traumatized because of COVID. Now, here's the great news. One of the best things that therapy helps with is retraining that little amygdala, retraining that little almond to say, hey, whoa, this isn't dangerous. I know it feels that way, and I know that over time you've been taught that this is dangerous or that it was dangerous, but you don't have to worry about that anymore. Therapy helps people dive deep into what caused that trigger in the amygdala, whether it be COVID, whether it be abuse, whether it be neglect, whether it be something that they saw, whether it be something that they heard about, whatever it might be, that thing that retrained your amygdala to say, woo, woo, something is dangerous, even when it's not. Therapy helps retrain that amygdala so that when things happen that are not dangerous, the amygdala isn't firing. Now, in the world of COVID, everyone is kind of on guard for different reasons, for different things. All of our amygdalas have been trained in ways to respond quickly, to have that quick fight, flight, freeze. Now there's others. There's fight, flight, freeze, appease, and there's even another one. Fight, flight, freeze, appease, and it's collapse. Fight, flight, freeze, appease, and collapse. All of those are responses to trauma due to that amygdala telling you that something is dangerous, even if it's not. Sometimes it is, but even if it's not dangerous, that amygdala can hijack your brain, tell you that it is dangerous, and cause you to react in a way that you later regret. Because of COVID, we've all had these things happen, where now that amygdala is rewired and is causing some trouble. There is a fantastic book by a man named Bessel van der Kolk. The book is called The Body Keeps the Score. And in that book, Dr. van der Kolk says this: while all parents need all the help they can get to help raise secure children, traumatized parents in particular need help to be attuned to their children's needs. Let me read it one more time and then let's break it down. While all parents need all the help they can get to help raise secure children, traumatized parents in particular need help to be attuned to their children's needs. Let's start with that first part. All parents need all the help they can get to raise secure children. I could stop there. All parents need all the help that they can get to raise secure children. So if you are a parent, if you are watching this, now I take the definition of parent from Dr. Daniel Siegel, who says it's anybody who is involved in the work of raising and supporting children. So if you are a mom, dad, brother, sister, grandparent, uncle, coach, teacher, counselor, pastor, whatever you might be, if you are involved in the work of raising and supporting kids, then we need all the help we can get to raise secure children. So don't feel bad if you feel like you need to reach out, because everybody, whether they'll admit it or not, needs help raising secure children. So let's just stop there. All parents need all the help they can get to raise secure children. So if you are a parent, if you are someone involved in the support and raising of children, you need therapy, because you need help raising secure children. There's no shame in it. It's okay. You can reach out and ask for help. But let's get to this next part. Traumatized parents in particular need help to be attuned to their children's needs. Traumatized parents need more help. Guess what? If you're a parent in today's world, you are a traumatized parent because of COVID, because of all these things that have happened, because of all the community violence, because of all the other things. You are a traumatized parent. So guess what? If you thought you needed help before, you need even more help now. And if you didn't think you needed help before, or you wouldn't admit it, now is the time, because traumatized parents in particular need even more help to be attuned to their children's needs. And here's why that happens. Attunement happens in the cortex. Attunement happens in this front part of the brain. Well, guess what? If you're trapped down here because of your own trauma, you can never get up here to be attuned to your child and helping them get what they need. So if you are a parent, you need to be in therapy to make sure that your amygdala is not firing in all sorts of wild ways that will cause you to not be able to attune to and help meet the needs of your children. While all parents need all the help they can get to help raise secure children, traumatized parents in particular need help to be attuned to their children's needs. Oh, isn't that the truth? If you're a parent, it's okay to need help. It's okay. All parents need help to raise secure children. Dr. Vanderkolk goes on to say this. The role of therapeutic relationships, whatever that might be. Therapeutic relationships can come in all sorts of varieties, but the role of therapeutic relationships is to provide physical and emotional safety, including safety from feeling shamed, admonished, or judged, and to bolster the courage to tolerate, face, and process the reality of what has happened. Physical and emotional safety. That's number one. The role of therapeutic relationships is to provide physical and emotional safety. How many of us in today's world are begging for physical and emotional safety? When people think about therapy, a lot of times they think of somebody laying on a couch and the therapist just jotting down notes while they talk. That's not therapy anymore. For the most part. There are a few that still do it that way. But for the most part, it's just a safe place with a safe person to have a safe conversation that provides physical and emotional safety, including safety from feeling shamed. Oh my goodness, can you imagine as a parent how much shame do you feel at times of just not feeling good enough, not feeling like you did enough, feeling that shame. If you are a child and you feel shame because of the things that you messed up with at school, the grades that you didn't get, whatever it might be, feeling shame, therapy is a safe place to deal with that shame. Safety from feeling admonished. Can you imagine children coming into my office? I use play therapy as my main modality is what we call it, but main technique is play therapy. So kids come in and I'm telling you, they trash my office. The toys are everywhere by the end, and sometimes parents will come in at the end and be like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, I will help you clean this up. How could you? And I say, no, 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 no. They're allowed to do that in here. In here, that's safe. I will not admonish a child for dumping toys on the ground. Safety from feeling admonished. What about those Facebook wars? What about those opinions that differ from other people in your circle? In therapy, you can go to therapy, release all those things. You can say whatever you want, however you want to say it, and there is safety from being admonished or judged. Oh my goodness, how many times nowadays is it that you will say one thing and people jump on it and say that you're a terrible person? In therapy, there's safety from feeling judged. And to bolster the courage to tolerate what has happened, COVID, to tolerate what has happened to you in the past, to tolerate what is happening right now, to tolerate what may happen in the future, but to tolerate what has happened, the courage to tolerate it. That comes from a therapeutic relationship. To face the courage to face what has happened. Rather than trying to distance yourself from it and never think of it ever again, therapy will give you the courage to face it. So to tolerate it, to deal with it as it's coming, and to face it, not to run away, but to look it in the eyes and say, you know what? This is a big situation, but I can do this. I can face it. And finally, process the reality of what has happened. So many of us have lost a lot over these past several years. And so many of us try not to think about those things. So many people try to stay away from the thoughts about it all. So many people try to stay away from thinking about it, reminding themselves about it, reminding their children about it, reminding anyone about it. They just kind of want to keep moving forward rather than tolerate, face, and process the reality of what has happened. When you do that, that amygdala tells you, yes, this is good. I told you it was dangerous. Keep believing me. It was dangerous. Don't tolerate it. Don't face it. Don't process it. Just keep believing me. Keep believing me that this is dangerous, even sometimes when it's not. Therapy helps. So whether you are feeling stressed out from COVID, whether you are feeling stressed out from being a parent, whether you are feeling stressed out from being at school, or whether you are the caregiver, parent, or loved one, or trusted one of a child who you see is just having a hard time because they're not expressing themselves the way that you feel like is appropriate. Maybe they're blowing up in some big ways. Maybe they're shutting down in some big ways. Maybe it seems like things have just changed for some reason. Whether you are an adult, whether you are a child, no matter who you are, all of us have been through a lot. All of us have had some changes in our brain because of the things that we've been through. And because of that, all of us can benefit from therapy. So whatever your perception was coming into this, I hope that you'll consider that therapy may be a great option for you. There's all sorts of ways to find a therapist. There's lots online. If you do a search, there's lots of local places. There's virtual places. Many of them will take all different types of insurance. Some of them will even work with you if you don't have insurance. They'll also work on a sliding scale to make sure that you can get the help and the services that you need and desire so that you can be someone who has the courage to tolerate, face, and process the reality of what has happened. To fix our world, one must start by fixing oneself. And if we would do that, if we would focus on really being able to tolerate, face, and process the reality of what has happened to us, whatever that may be for you. All of us have been through things. All of us have lived, and because of that, all of us have been through some tough things. And all of us can benefit from therapy. Everyone needs a therapist, and I hope that you will give it a shot. Please make sure to follow MisterStuTV everywhere on social media. Nope, not on Snapchat. We are not there. But TikTok, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. Please follow us. We are also on YouTube. Also, please check out MisterStuTV.com. That's MisterStuTV.com. MisterStuTV.com. There you can find some resources to help out. You can find links to all of our YouTube videos, and coming soon you'll be able to find the blog from inside my mind. My brain works a little different, and that's okay. So please join us there, and I hope to see you again soon. We will be doing Facebook Live on the second Sunday of every month. So our next one is scheduled for September the 11th. September 11th at 5 p.m. Please be back and join us here for that, and I will see you then. Remember that no matter how you're feeling, it's okay to feel however you feel. You choose how to respond. You are seen, heard, understood, known, and loved here, and we can't wait to see you again. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.